Welcome everyone to this Lindenwood University Town Hall. I hope that most of you recognize me, but my name is John Porter and I'm the president of Lindenwood. I'm joined today by three senior members of Lindenwood's leadership team: Dr. Marilyn Abbott, our current provost and vice president for academic affairs; Dr. Mark Arant, incoming provost and senior vice president for academic affairs. We're glad Mark can join us today; and Terry Whittum, senior vice president for enrollment management. The COVID-19 pandemic has created a disruption unlike anything we've seen in our lifetime and has left all of us facing new challenges. Lindenwood is no different. These challenges will require our tenacity, creativity, and dedication to overcome. They will also require that our faculty and staff understand the situation in full, which is why I'm happy to have this chat with you today. I'm going to start by reviewing the university's response to the pandemic up to this point. I'll give you an overview of the financial implications and our strategy for dealing with them. And then the panel and I will spend about 30 minutes answering your questions you've submitted prior to this broadcast. Okay, so that's the plan. So let's dive in. Lindenwood began tracking the growth of the COVID-19 pandemic in January due to its impact on our international students. In February, we had to relocate students that were studying abroad in Asia and Europe. By early March, the situation was changing incredibly rapidly, and it became clear that serious action would be needed to protect our community here at home. Multiple staff and administrative teams began meeting daily, sometimes even more than once a day, to formulate a response that balanced community safety with the need to continue educating our students. Throughout, the university response was guided by recommendations and input from the public health experts, some of them from our own faculty. On March 11th, during spring break, we announced that all courses would move to the virtual environment for 2 weeks. And on March 16th, we realized that move would have to extend for the duration of the spring terms. By March 22nd, all students had left campus and employees were assigned to work from home. Those who couldn't, whether due to childcare challenges, illness, or the nature of their duties, were given paid leave to adjust and to care for their families. Our faculty embraced the switch to the virtual environment for the benefit of their students. Even if they've never taught online before, even if their courses were not well suited to that environment. By and large, the results have been impressive, from printmaking using found objects to flash fiction stories written about quarantine, to simple perseverance in teaching and learning statistics, cognitive curriculum concepts, management, and kinesiology, virtually all of a sudden. Of course, not everything went perfectly smoothly. Some students were overwhelmed, and some instructors needed extra time or support to find their footing. We extended the withdrawal deadline and the deadline to make up incomplete grades to provide our students more options. Beyond the classroom, we've offered additional financial and academic support to our students. Students unable to return home were housed in Linden Lodge, and staff members donated to supply those students with additional food items and comfort items. Students who did return home received an immediate refund on their room and board for the rest of the term. At the suggestion of alumni, the Lions Relief Fund was created to provide emergency aid to students who have suffered hardships. So far, that fund has raised almost $15,000 and has assisted, among others, a student who lost everything in a house fire just a few weeks ago. We supported our community by making a significant donation of personal protective equipment to SSM Health, led by the generosity of the paramedicine program in the School of Health Sciences. So what's our strategy moving forward? While I'm proud of our response so far, there is still much work to be done. I want to give you a sense of the consequences we're facing as a result of the pandemic and talk about how we intend to handle them. And of course, when we might be able to return to campus. Before the pandemic began, Lindenwood was already engaged in tightening our budget, adjusting to a changed landscape for higher education, and preparing for a looming demographic cliff. Unfortunately, it is now clear that the budget will require additional adjustments. We're currently forecasting that we will have between 10 and 15% fewer students than expected this fall. That is in line with national trends. In fact, slightly lower than the decrease other universities predict. While it is not yet entirely certain what shape budget cuts will take, we are committed to maintaining a faculty and staff who can provide a full and exciting university experience to our students. All options are on the table, and unfortunately, those options may include layoffs and painful reductions in operations budgets and resources. I know that this may be alarming information, and you're probably already formulating your questions, but I want all the cards on the table, face up. The reality is that the other measures we've taken so far are inadequate to cover the widening gap in the budget. We've already reduced or eliminated overtime and closed almost all open positions. The cabinet and I have taken salary reductions. Capital building projects are largely on hold. We are increasing our fundraising capabilities as quickly as we can. However, sustaining the institution of the long term is going to require more serious budgetary intervention. Additional cuts will be based on a careful review of data and alignment with our mission, and will be announced in the next 2 weeks. Even with cuts, the university will incur a significant deficit next year. Many of you have already stepped forward to offer ideas and solutions to alleviate some of the pain and help us continue providing for our students. And we thank you for your vital input. Because Lindenwood was already deeply engaged in a strategic evaluation of our budget and operations, we have not yet been paralyzed by our pandemic response as some institutions have. The work of the university continues to surge ahead, and we remain more committed than ever to our mission of real experience, real success. I look forward to providing you additional details on our strategic deliberations in the coming months. But for now, I will simply assure you of my complete confidence in Lindenwood's ability to progress with purpose on the other side of this virus. Moving forward includes our firm attention to welcome students back to campus this August. A re-entry task force has been formed to plan for the adjustments that will be necessary to protect the health of our students, staff, and faculty in order to make such a return possible. Physical distancing measures, procurement of protective equipment, and contingency plans are all under consideration. We continue to incorporate the guidance of public health experts and will announce the details of our plan for employee and student returns to campus by July 1st. I hope this very rapid fire burst of information gives you a sense of where we've been and where we're going. Many parts of our response are still being developed, so we ask for your patience on those details. But we will take this opportunity to answer a few more of the questions you submitted to dig a little deeper on some of your most pressing concerns. We have almost 800 people registered for these town halls, so we selected questions that represent the concerns of as many people as possible. If your question isn't answered here, it may be that you can find your answer on our COVID fact page at www.lindenwood.edu/coronavirus. If you have new questions as a result of what I've shared today, please enter them in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and we will try to get to them as we have time. So let's go ahead and get started on our Q&A. So I'll begin with this first question, and then our panel will have other questions to follow. This first question was asked by a staff member. Will there be any changes to cleaning procedures once we return to campus? Can offices, staff, faculty request cleaning wipes for their phones, keyboards, etc.? And the short answer is yes. And just so you know, custodial staff have sanitized the campus since its closure in March. We've gone through all the rooms. We put signage on the rooms that they have been sanitized. And so essential personnel back on campus since March 31st, they really got a head start on the cleaning, so we were way ahead of the game on that piece. Social distancing measures will be implemented, and many staff will be able to continue working from home as appropriate, and we will be making decisions as we go forward. Figuring out whether we can even get PPE will be dependent upon supply and demand. Like other institutions and other organizations, they're hard to get, but we're going to try and do what we can to provide what we need when folks come back on campus. So let me go ahead and turn it over to our next question.
Thank you, President Porter. Second question is a common one that we've received from a parent. And the question is, what precautions will you be taking for students in the resident halls and classrooms? Well, in the resident halls, we have started to implement a number of new activities to help protect our students. We'll be adding additional hand sanitizer stations. We will have more frequent cleaning of common areas, including areas such as the elevator buttons, stair rails, removal of lounge furniture to encourage physical distancing. We will also be tracking students as they enter and leave the resident halls to make sure that they are practicing the proper distancing and health benefits that are required for this pandemic.
So as far as the classrooms go, we are looking at reducing density in the classrooms, partly by potentially having smaller groups of students come to class on different days of the week. We're also looking at the possibility of outfitting all of our classrooms with recording equipment, cameras and microphones that would permit us to record and broadcast all the classes so that students, particularly those who may have issues, health issues that would prevent them from coming to class or being around others, to be able to participate in classes. Those are all underway at this point, under discussion. If we're going to be meeting in person in classes, then we will also have to implement a cleaning policy that will involve the faculty and students themselves after each class. So all of those things are under discussion at this time.
Thank you, Marilyn. We have a question from a faculty member asking, are we going to be planning a proactive or reactive response to the predicted second wave that should occur in the fall? We are going to be ready. This is a difficult time that we're in. We've learned a lot from being online already. A lot of those key lessons will be implemented for the fall semester to provide the students as excellent an experience, regardless of face-to-face or online, as possible. We're also looking at a potential shortened term, possibly front-loading labs and other sections to try to avoid as much disruption as possible. But since we are facing uncertainty, we're going to have to put in a lot of measures to be prepared for almost any eventuality. So we will be prepared for whatever comes this fall.
Thank you, Mark. A question from a staff member. Has an emergency action plan been discussed for if or when COVID-19 reemerges again and we end up with positive cases on campus? Will there be a place to quarantine ill students who might not be able to travel home? Well, we've already identified spaces both in our houses and in a resident hall that we will have set aside up to 48 rooms for students who need to be quarantined who test positive. We will also, as we did in March, we are committed to providing housing to students, particularly our international students, who will not be able to return home should we have to close the campus again.
Okay, thanks, Terry. This next question is from a staff member, and the question is, what is our policy moving forward regarding large crowds, in particular sporting events, performances, homecoming, et cetera? And I would say this is a plan that's still in development. We will follow the guidelines from our public health experts, seeking to maintain the student experience and community health and safety standards. So we will be requiring masks to be worn when we're around other people on campus. And so that will be one of the things that we'll have to get used to in the near future.
The next question is from a parent. Has moving to online instruction shown improvement, the same or lowered performance in the student body as a whole? What will this result prompt you to do in the immediate future? Well, as far as the improvement or decline in the classes, that's difficult for us to generalize at this point. Certainly, many faculty were well prepared to take their classes online. Many of our students had already taken classes online, so the transition was not very difficult for all students in all classes. There are certainly classes where the challenge was greater, certainly classes with hands-on components that were difficult. But what we are doing this term is we've added questions to our student course evaluation. Students have actually already completed those, and we'll be evaluating the answers. The questions are specifically referring to their experience in the online component of the class, in addition to the overall evaluation. So in response to what we hear from the students, we'll be working with faculty to improve specific courses, to work on specific assignments, or alternative exercises that they can do to make sure that if this has to go online again, then we will be ready and the courses will be exactly what we want them to be.
A related question from a student, are our instructors provided resources to improve the quality of online classes? And what can students do if they experience a less than quality class experience in the online format? As Marilyn just said, we're going to be working with the data we receive from the course evaluations and working with faculty this May to help them reflect on what their performance in the classes and ways that they can improve. We're also going to be running 3 online learning communities for faculty this summer and sending faculty to virtual workshops for new techniques and exploring other developmental options. This is the same commitment that we would have to our face-to-face courses, because Lindenwood will always be committed to excellent instruction. Students should discuss, though, options with advisors and provide feedback to academic leadership and reflect upon what support is needed and share that with SAS and the academic leadership. Again, the same processes that would be in place for the face-to-face courses.
Okay, this next question is from an alum. It says, when will the public be able to safely return to campus to attend activities, use facilities, and/or simply enjoy taking a stroll among the linden trees of our historic campus? And I would just say, you know, we want to be able to open the campus as soon as possible. And certainly this will depend on our local and state mandates, you know, as well as the reentry task force plans. And so safety will continue to be our top priority. Before we reopen the campus, we want to make sure we do it, and we want to make sure we do it with a solid plan.
The next question is from a faculty member. I'm in one of the vulnerable groups, those over 60 years old. With the likelihood that the COVID-19 will resurface this fall, I would be reluctant to return to a campus classroom and risk being exposed to the virus. Is there any thought of letting faculty give lectures remotely to the classroom? As I mentioned earlier, we are looking at a variety of options to improve the social distancing environment in the classroom and the option for remote instruction. We will be working with faculty and deans to determine what the needs of every individual faculty member are and how best their courses can be delivered, as well as at the same time protecting their health and the health of their students.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn. Well, those are the end of the questions that we had that we kind of sifted through and synthesized. I think we have opportunity now to just answer some live questions. And so as I look at the Q&A board here, let me go ahead and ask some of the questions here, and then we'll divert them to the right panel member here. So the first one here is, will faculty and/or students be required to wear masks or other PPE? And I slightly talked about this, and the answer is yes. I mean, when we're around other folks, I think all of us have heard the news in terms of what masks do. It's really for protecting other folks, and we want to do that. And so I would just say yes, we will do that, and we'll follow the guidance of what our government officials give us and our health and safety folks give us. So I would probably get used to that, as we've all been to the store. We've all had opportunity to be out in public for various reasons. Hopefully we all have worn the mask, and so I would see that continuing. Let me get to the next question here. As staff cuts are made, or how will adjuncts and full-time staff be notified? Let me move that over to Marilyn.
Well, we are still working out the plan and the process for this, but everyone who's affected will be notified before the end of May. Deb Ayers is probably the better person to answer this, but I've been working with her on this, and that is the plan.
Okay, great, thank you. And here's a follow-up again. Who will enforce mask wearing on campus in the fall? I think we're all going to try and have to enforce this. I don't know that we're going to have mask wearing, the police, but you know, I think as responsible adults, hopefully we can keep our students wearing the masks, ourselves wearing the mask, and be leaders among them. And so we're going to rely on everybody to be a part of this and to take part in it. And hopefully everybody will know that we need to do this, and it'll be important for all of us to do it. So I'll move on to the next question here. Even if the county or state government opens back up to the public, will Lindenwood consider remaining closed to ensure the safety of staff, faculty, and students? I'll answer this. The answer is potentially. I mean, I think we're going to look at making sure that we're not putting folks in harm's way, but at the same time, we want an open campus. And I think the key word here is being pragmatic. You know, what's going to make sense? Is there a potential that folks could come on campus and someone be infected? Absolutely, and it's a probability. It's probably going to happen. So I would say that we're going to have a space available for those that it happens to and those that may get infected, and so we will deal with that. Does that mean we need to close the entire campus down? No, not necessarily. So if you look, we're obviously coming up with our own plans with this reentry team. And at the same time, you know, we're looking at what other institutions are doing. So we're all learning from each other, since none of us have never been through this, and we'll continue to learn from each other. So I would just say we'll stay close. We'll do what's safe. We fully anticipate that folks will be back, and but we're going to try and plan for as much as we can different scenarios so that we can accommodate those and best be positioned to handle them. I don't see any other questions coming in. So if that's the case, I may just move to my concluding remarks. Unless any of the other panel members, do you have anything that you'd like to say before I move to my concluding remarks?
John, there do seem to be some additional questions there.
All right, let me just see here. Maybe I didn't toggle down enough. Very good.
Hold down.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. So good. Let's keep going. We've got plenty of time here. So the next question is: are there plans to provide technology like laptops to students who do not have access to these items, and it prevents them from being able to take classes online? So I'll give that to you, Marilyn.
Well, we have already provided some opportunities for some students to purchase technology through the CARES Act. Some of the students who had to purchase a laptop or increase Wi-Fi access or that sort of thing were able to file for reimbursement. Terry might be able to talk a little bit more about that. But we've also referred students to some local retailers who sell refurbished laptops, nice ones, for a few $100s. So there are opportunities for students to obtain the technology they need in most cases, and in some cases also to receive financial assistance with purchasing that. Terry, did you have anything to add?
Yes, Marilyn, the CARES Act funds are actually available to students, first of all, who were enrolled this spring and had been disadvantaged by COVID-19. We're looking at those students right now. Unfortunately, the government has put a long list of requirements and restrictions, so we have to make sure that those students meet those. Then the second wave of those will be when students are enrolled this summer. And then because those funds will continue, we will also be able to look at students in the fall. So when they're enrolled in the fall, and if, for example, in this scenario, they need additional technology and they meet the guidelines, they can apply for funding for that technology.
And one of the things, actually, Terry, this was a conversation that I had earlier this morning with someone else, that I need to talk to you about. But I think we need to look at informing students that although we fully intend to be on ground starting in the fall, it is possible that they will have to switch to online at some point, and that they should be prepared to do that. So that they would need, we already have a definition of minimum technical requirements for our fully online students. And I think we need to provide that to all of our students and make sure that they can comply with that if need be.
Very good. Yeah, and I'll just chime in on that also. I mean, as you all know, and I think some of you have even had some of the scenarios. So probably about 4 weeks ago, we covered as a team what the scenario planning would be for the fall. So there is a chance that we could all come back on campus and the virus rear up again, where we may have to leave the campus. And so how would we approach that? So that's one of the scenarios, and amongst others that we're working plans out for. So let me get to the next question. So it kind of ties into, so what is the date of return? And I wish I could tell you that, but I will say that, and I have this in my closing comments also, is that by July 1st, we're hoping to have all of it laid out. And you know, our hope is that by the end of August, we have our returning students. We're not sure about athletics yet. We're also looking at what the athletic associations are doing from an NCAA perspective and from an SLS perspective, so in clubs. So we'll have to watch all of this as we go forward. You know, as a team, you know, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we've tried to make decisions every 2 weeks. You know, and that's why we've had kind of some rapid fire answers or directives, but it was based on the latest information. So as we move through this, if we can make a decision prior to July 1st, we'll absolutely do that. But we're trying to, you know, put it down effective July 1st, that we would have these plans laid out so that all of us can appropriately plan for what's coming in the fall. Next question, will there be a system in place to ensure masks are distributed to those who either cannot afford or acquire a mask through other means? And the second follow-up question is, will PPE be provided? And the answer is we're going to try and accommodate and have masks available. And again, it's going to depend on what is available in the marketplace, and we'll see what we can do. But that would be our hopes. We're also looking at, you know, some of the technologies that are available once people come on campus to try and detect things, and so, you know, or detect the virus, and we'll see where that leads. But if we can, we will. And but again, we're not going to let faculty, staff, certainly students come on campus if we're not prepared to handle the influx of all those folks. So we'll do that accordingly. So let me move down here. Next question, I think it's kind of a follow-on, but I don't think, you know, do we have a potential return date for faculty and staff? I think I just mentioned in that answer, so hopefully you have that. Will students and instructors be expected to wear masks in the classroom during instruction? My answer to that would be yes. As Marilyn mentioned, you know, we're looking at the potential so that we have the social distancing where, you know, maybe half the class spread out is there on Monday, or if you're Tuesday, Thursday, the other half is there on Thursday, but we have recording devices so that you can watch from the residence halls or wherever those folks may be. So, but we do expect that in the class that students would, and faculty would be required to wear masks. I don't know if any other thoughts on that. Let me get to this next question. I noticed a position for innovation and strategy posted. Would that position help in guiding our response? And so, yeah, we have that position posted. I think, could that position help? It could help, there's no doubt about that. It's more on the strategic side, but certainly whoever we put in that position would have experience and knowledge looking at from a strategic perspective and what other institutions may have done in crisis situations. Certainly nobody's been through this. So that's a great question. And is the potential there? Absolutely it is. And we'll have to see as we move through this, you know, when that role gets filled. But we're looking at as potential candidates for that. So let me keep toggling down here. What is the plan going forward for athletics, particularly the fall sports? And sorry for the rest of the panel. I think most of these I'll tee up. You know, we're watching the NCAA, like I mentioned earlier. I'd love to see all the fall sports start on time, but we're not sure that's going to happen. We just know that through June, we have no functions. Any function that was going to be on campus is no longer going to be on campus. But in July, we'll see if there's going to be things happening. We've had many camps here, and certainly we've had to cancel all of those. So the idea here is that you know, we want to move forward with our athletics in the fall. And you know, if you look at some of the conferences, looking at maybe reducing the number of games. So that's a potential, which means we could kind of push out our start date when athletes would come on campus. You know, if they were like football comes certainly several weeks prior to the rest of the students, and we'll have to play that by ear. But I would love to see our athletics get started up and enrolling in the fall, but again, we'll have to play that by ear. Next question, what role would the health center have in ensuring students are tested for COVID-19? Is there a possibility to partner with the testing site? Let me move that to Terry, and Terry, if you want to give a thought there.
Absolutely. The health center will certainly be the front line once the students return to campus, but their staff is fairly small. And so we are already in the process of talking with medical providers, different hospitals in the region, about how we can partner to provide additional services, including testing.
Great. All right. Thank you, Terry. This next question, how are cuts to faculty and staff determined? Will these cuts be permanent or temporary? Let me move that over to Marilyn. Marilyn, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
Good.
There we go.
Okay. The cuts that will be implemented in May will be permanent. We are trying to take a strategic look at the needs of the university for the upcoming, not just this year, but in the future, keeping in mind that we anticipate a decrease in enrollment. It could be on the order of 15% or so. Let's see, what was the other part of the question?
Will these cuts be permanent or temporary, really?
Okay, all right.
How are they determined?
The process. The process involves the supervisors and the deans reviewing every position with regard to its relevance and importance for the strategic plan of the university and the needs right now, as well as for the next year or two. And then also looking at the individuals involved in each of the positions and their contributions to the university.
Yeah, and let me just comment on that. I mean, we don't take any of this lightly. This is, as I told the team, this is heavy lifting, and I have to just be perfectly honest with you. It's not easy for anybody, and the thought is, you know, we'd love not to be doing what we're doing or going through what we're going through, but we have to deal with where we're at and where we think we're going to go as a university. And it's important that we align ourselves and position ourselves to be effective well into the future. And so, unfortunately, these are the measures that we need to take, have to take. And so, so I appreciate the teams working through this in a real formalized fashion. The next question is, what is the status of the new STEM building and how has COVID changed this? So COVID has changed this, but I would just say even before COVID, as we were looking at our revenues and looking at our expenses and the fact that we needed to cut, even before COVID, we had talked about delaying the STEM for probably up to at least 12 months. And because we couldn't in good conscience go out and ask for the amount of money that's going to take to build STEM, knowing that, you know, we've got our own house that we really need to clean up. And so we're putting that on hold, although it's very, very exciting, but we don't want to speak out of both sides of our mouth. And on one, we're going to spend 150 million, on the other, you know, we're going to reduce. And so we just think it's prudent right now to hold off on that Does it mean we may need to start a new residence hall? Potentially. It just depends on what that looks like in terms of capacity for this fall and whether or not we think that should be something we start sooner rather than later. The other piece to that is we certainly, to upkeep the 192 homes that surround the university, it's quite expensive. And so, from a business case perspective and return on investment, it may make sense to put something in place and take down some of those homes. So that's a question that would be a component of the STEM that we were working on. So we may do something there, but again, it'll depend on what that business case and return on investment looks like. The next one is to minimize costs, has consideration been given to offer early retirement for those planning on retiring this year? Let me just kind of move that back over to Marilyn again. And you're on mute, Marilyn.
Yes, I undid. I did it.
Okay. All right.
So this is something that was considered an early retirement incentive is not a program that will give you an immediate return because typically you're actually paying people to leave. So if we're looking at a shortfall of revenue for the upcoming year, it's not a practical option.
Okay. Next one is we have successfully utilized adjunct professors for many programs. What are your predictions regarding those professionals? And I'll move it over to you again, Marilyn.
Okay, thank you. Certainly, we will continue to use adjunct faculty, but we are increasing the efficiency of offering our courses in the upcoming year by increasing enrollment limits and minimum enrollment limits, which will decrease the total number of sections that we're going to be offering. And to be honest, that will reduce the number of sections that are offered to adjunct instructors.
Okay. And just to follow into that also, what percentage of faculty and staff will be affected by cuts?
I have not calculated a percentage. The numbers we were looking at this morning were, it's single digit percentage for certain. 1 to 2% would be a guess.
Yeah. And I think in some areas it's a little bit more than that. So, we're trying to keep it, certainly manageable. And I think looking at this next question, and I'll just go ahead and answer this. So will more positions be cut later in the summer, or are the cuts made in May the only ones that will be made for the time being? And so I think the latter part of your question here, it's for the time being, these are the cuts. Do we want to do another cut later on in the year? No, the answer is absolutely not. We really want to make what we're doing now permanent and in terms of the go forward strategy, but we don't know what we don't know. And so can I say for sure that will be the case? I can't, but I think just know that we did 2 rounds here. One, we knew before the pandemic, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, that this was coming, and so we were taking appropriate measures to reduce our budget by 7% next year. Then when the pandemic came along, obviously we have to get to greater lengths there, and so our hope is that we don't have to do any further cuts once we go through this next round. But again, we don't know what we don't know and what could rear itself up and put us in a position. We're planning for a 10 to 15% reduction in enrollment. If that reduction would go higher than that, then we have to figure out what that means from a budgetary perspective. And certainly, as you all know, as we all manage our own households, we can't spend more than we bring in. It puts us in a deficit mode. I will tell you, I said this in the opening remarks, that even with what we're doing for next year, we have a fairly large deficit. But I think the good news is this, not I think, it is the good news, that we think over the next 2 years, that can be our plateau. We can even this out. And the way we've got this laid out, assuming that the pandemic doesn't totally interrupt it, and what we think for the fall will happen, we see growth, but that's not for 2 years. So we've got 2 years that we've really got to buckle down, and we've got to do the things that are necessary for us to be successful and position ourselves. Okay, I think we got still a few more minutes here. Let me get to the next question. With the 4 athletic teams recently moved into club sports from university funded, was this related directly to COVID-19 impacts or Project Gemini? Is there any chance to move one or any of these sports back into a non-club team? So I think I'll answer it with yes and no. Did COVID-19 accelerate things? Absolutely, accelerated us in our academics, in our athletics, in our programs, our operations, all that we do. And so, it absolutely did. And so, is there a chance to move back? I don't think there would be much of a chance to move back. I will tell you that, you know, Brad and the rest of the team, we met yesterday, they're doing a lot of analysis, and we want to make, here's the thing about our athletics. We want excellence in athletics just like we do in academics. And we want to make sure that we can support our teams appropriately. And we don't want to spread our resources so thin that we don't have a good work-life balance for our team. And so, or when I say team, I'm talking about our staff, our coaches, those that are working the events. And so we're really trying to look at this, take a step back and say, how do we position ourselves for the future and make sure that we can support the athletics. I'm a huge athletic fan. I've been to probably in my short time here, probably between 30 and 40 events and trying to support our teams, but more than even more than that, I enjoy the athletics themselves. So we're gonna do what is right going forward, but we want to make sure we support each of the programs appropriately, and that may mean moving things around and so that we can support them appropriately. Okay. Okay, let me get to the next question here. Have across-the-board salary reductions been considered as opposed to letting people go? And I will tell you this, and again, I hope you get the feeling that we're just being 100% honest and as I said in my opening remarks, the comments are you know, our cards are face up. And the answer is we have thought about that. The problem is this: is you look at the university. Our infrastructure is built to accommodate many, many, many more students. And so I hate to use the word right size. The problem with just saying, hey, how about everybody take a 10% pay cut? And you know, off the bat, that's about a $7 to $8 million savings right there. And you'd say, that's a great short-term solution. But if you look at our projections and our strategy and the work that Terry and his team has done, you know, it's going to be a while before we get to an infrastructure where we're supporting 12, 13,000 students. And right now we're about 8 or less. And so we would be back in this position next year and most likely the year after, because we're not at a point where we can support the amount of students appropriately with the right amount of faculty and staff. And so doing a short-term salary reduction for everybody only pushes off. I would rather, and I think as a leadership team, we've agreed that we would rather right-size the institution, position us for the future. And let me just tell you this, and I've been in many of the faculty, we have had our roundtables and lunches, and I've spoken very openly. I want to get to a point where we have a surplus of 10 million. And that surplus of 10 million, first off, is funds that can go directly back to our faculty and staff for development programs, for the Lions Fund, for the things that Annie has talked about. I want to fund these kinds of things. I want you all to be able to do what's good for you from a professional development perspective. When we had the all-employee meeting earlier in the year, I said I'd really like to see us really take advantage of professional development and online training and those kinds of things. So I like dollars to go back into that. And so so we want to get to that point. And unless we take the measures today and do what we're doing, we're not going to position ourselves for that, to enjoy those kinds of things. So I appreciate the thoughts. And by the way, you know, a lot of the inputs that you all have given, we've taken into consideration. And so we appreciate that. We're listening. It's not that we have all the answers. We're going to be pliable and amiable and palatable, all those kinds of things. And we'll continue as we go through this. It's not easy for anybody, and certainly for those that are going to be affected. But just know that your interests are top of mind for us, and we want to appropriately position us so that we're successful going forward. So I think I think the last one, and then we'll get to the concluding remarks here, and that is, will student positions also be cut? And I'll again move that over to either Marilyn or Terry, whichever wants to take that.
I'll take that one, Marilyn. Even before COVID-19, as we were looking to do what is often referred to as the Project Gemini cuts and get our budget more in line, there were certain student positions that were reduced. Those were very strategic when we cut those. And right now, there has been no discussion of cutting further student positions. But as President Porter said, depending on what the enrollment and financial situation in the fall looks like, those may be back on the table.
Okay, well, I think those are all the questions. So I think we've answered what's come over in the chat room here. So first of all, let me just thank you to all who submitted questions. And I also want to thank Marilyn, Mark, and Terry for helping me answer these questions. But before we go, I want to offer a few concluding thoughts. First, let me reiterate, it is our absolute intention to have students on campus here in August, and to keep them, along with our employees, safe and healthy as they pursue the educational experience that will set them up for future success. Things might not be quite the same as they were when we began to support each other by staying home, but we will make the best of it using the entrepreneurial creativity Lions everywhere are known for. Lions are also known for supporting their community, even at great cost to themselves. We've had to make some gut-wrenching calls this spring, including canceling our commencement ceremonies this May. I want to take a moment to acknowledge that as a result of this pandemic, we've all experienced real loss that we grieve. Students who have to delay crossing the stage and/or who can't complete their athletic season, faculty and staff who don't get to shake the hands of graduates or provide one last piece of advice, retiring employees who have to spend their last weeks on the job away from treasured colleagues, not to mention the sorrow of those who have lost loved ones due to this virus. For those that have, my deepest condolences. This whole situation has been harrowing, and I've been immensely proud of the way the Lindenwood community has stood strong. We will return strong as well. Starting tomorrow, we'll be celebrating our graduates online, and all our May graduates have been invited to participate in December commencement exercises, which many of them have told us they will. We look forward to those ceremonies. In the coming days and weeks, we'll disperse additional aid to our students in need. Federal funds provided by the CARES Act arrived just yesterday, and over $700,000 has already been granted to our students, and more to come. You can direct students who might need financial assistance as a result of the pandemic to sfs@lindenwood.edu, and Student Financial Services will help them access the online application form. We're continuing to accept donations to the Lions Relief Fund and anticipate distributing those dollars to address students' needs that CARES Act funds don't cover. Summer tuition for undergraduate students has been reduced to $50 per credit hour in order to help retain students and give them the opportunity to catch up on any courses that the virus forced them to withdraw from. We have also announced a tuition freeze for the 2020-2021 academic year. The cost of tuition, room, and board will not increase this year as we try to alleviate a bit of the financial stress our students may be experiencing due to the economic downturn. Although Missouri is taking steps to relax restrictions and return to work, the Lindenwood campus remains closed in order to continue protecting our community. This closure is possible because of the excellent work our faculty and staff are doing at a distance, which lets essential personnel do their work on campus with less risk of exposure. Plans to reopen campus will be announced, as I mentioned, by July 1st. And as I said before, we will prioritize the safety of all our community members above all. Let me close by saying one most important thing. Thank you. Thank you for your dedication during this bewildering, stressful, bizarre, and grueling pandemic. Thank you to the faculty for adjusting your teaching on the fly and continuing to engage and educate our students, and for supporting each other to be even more effective. Thank you to staff who quickly adjusted procedures and processes to help students effectively and who have kept service standards at or above the Q2 bar we've come to expect. Thanks to everyone for just hanging in there. I know it's no small thing some days. Thank you for your patience as we chart a course forward and for your time today. I look forward to seeing you back on campus soon. This concludes our town hall. A recording will be available, and additional information on COVID response going forward may be found at www.lindenwood.edu/COVID. Thank you very much. Bye now.